regularly complain. Literally every day in my phone, on my WhatsApp groups, I get complaints, legitimate complaints from residents who speak about sewer bursts, who speak about the fact that despite the 130-hour water shedding program, they're only getting water every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. And the reality is that our water infrastructure is groaning. We have a water infrastructure which is over 40 years old. It is way beyond its economic lifespan. We do not have sufficient quantities of raw water. We last built a dam for this city in Chabez Dam in the early 1990s. That's over 30 years ago. And the population of this city has grown dramatically since then. So we have major problems. If you go down to the NEMA and to our residents associations, I encourage you to make the request. Come down to the NEMA water treatment works and see how antiquated it is. It was literally built in the 1940s and is in dire need of complete rehabilitation. And the reality is, in this city at least, that our water infrastructure, our WASH programs, are at a critical stage. And we have not had sufficient resources to adequately fund the maintenance of those, never mind maintenance, the rehabilitation and the new water infrastructure that we so desperately need. Let me leave you with a few things that we are trying to do ourselves as a city, taking into account that we, to be blunt, are pretty much on our own. That despite the devolution provisions in the Constitution, as a city, we need to understand that we are on our own. That if we do not organize ourselves efficiently, we cannot expect to receive much from central government. In fact, the reality of the last 2 years is that we have received a pittance from central government for our water sector, our WASH sector. Although there have been promises, those promises in the main have not been fulfilled. So I want to leave you with 3 examples of what we're trying to do. The first is that we are desperate to expand our sources of raw water. The government has told us, and it is correct, that they are building Guashangani Dam, and we applaud government. There's no guile in what I'm saying now. We genuinely applaud government for building Guashangani. But in all our discussions with the professionals, with the water engineers, they all, without exception, tell us that there are major challenges associated with Guashangani. The major challenge is the pipeline. They tell us that the building of the dam is the easy part. The difficult part from an engineering perspective is the construction of a 252-kilometer pipeline up ahead of 500 meters. It is a major engineering challenge. It is going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. And we have looked right across the country, for example, at Tokwe Mokosi. Tokwe Mokosi was completed a long time ago. But if you look at the irrigation schemes that were meant to be developed below Tokwe Mokosi, they have not been developed as they should have. And that is taking water using gravity. In other words, taking Tokwe Mokosi water and using gravity to feed it down to irrigation schemes. How much more difficult is it going to be to pump water 252 kilometers up ahead of 500 meters, particularly in the context of electricity load shedding? So we applaud government, but we have to be sensible and realize that this is not going to be a short-term solution to our water woes. And because of that, we've dredged up the thinking of previous city fathers, people like George Mlilo, the engineer who was in the city with an esteemed record in our city. And I've personally spoken to George Mlilo, and he said in the early 1990s, when the city was given the choice between Mchabez and glass block Bopoma Dam, he as an engineer wanted glass block Bopoma. I encourage our residents' associations to speak to George and Lilo to confirm what he has told me. So we dredged these up, we dusted off feasibility plans that were done in 1988. We spoke to government. Government advised us very early that they do not have sufficient funding for glass block Bopoma. So we decided that we would need to invoke the principle of devolution and looking after our own affairs. And that's why we went to Morocco in December last year, assisted by the African Development Bank, to get the funding necessary from the international community to fund the construction of glass block Bopoma Dam, on the understanding that central government can't assist us. And we are making progress. And my little appeal to the Residents Association is, please get behind glass block Bopoma. It is a critically important project, but it is a very good example of how local authorities, if you're going to follow the principles that you're talking about, rethinking wash sector financing in the context of devolution, rethink it in terms of, can you get international finance for wash programs aside from government? And all that you ask for from government is not money from central government, but guarantees that government will ensure that monies paid by ratepayers for water can then be channeled to service international debts. So that's the first one, first example I give. The second is in relation to our sewerage works. I'm sure, like many cities countrywide, our sewerage works are in a dreadful state. Those of you who live particularly in our high-density suburbs know that we have sewerage breaks. We are pumping just down the road here raw sewage as I speak into the Umguza River. If you go to the Upper Umguza Dam, it's a nightmare. And the reason for that is because, as I say, our sewerage works are running way below capacity. We have little funding ourselves, so what we have done as a city is a public-private partnership arrangement with a local company. A property developer, which is developing properties on the airport road, they needed a sewerage works. And so we've entered into an agreement that they don't have to build a new sewerage works, but they will help us rehabilitate Azelby 2 and 3 sewerage works in the city. And we are now working on that. We have a contract with that local company, and the deal is they will rehabilitate the Azelby sewerage works, and the quid pro quo is that they don't have to develop their own sewerage works. And that's a practical way of financing something that is necessary where we don't have the finances, where we're not going to get finances from central government. The third is an area that, and my colleagues in the residents' associations know that this has attracted some controversy in the city, and that is the establishment of a water authority. And many residents' associations have understandably expressed concern about the water authority, given the prevalence of corruption in our nation, given the fact that state assets are often taken and used for the benefit of a few people. A deep-rooted concern was expressed by residents' associations here about the establishment of that authority. The concern being that we take our city water assets and we hand it into the hands of a few people who then exploit those for their own benefit. So I get that. I understand that concern. But as I look at this, I believe that it's critically important that we do it. And what we need to do, and what we need to understand, is that water revenues coming into the city have been dissipated. People pay their water accounts, but instead of that money being used to rehabilitate our water delivery system, to build new dams, to get new pumps, it is dissipated. It is spread into all sorts of other expenditure. And what we need to do is establish a water authority which ring fences those water revenues to ensure that we invest back into the water sector. And to address your concerns, your legitimate concerns, we need to make sure that that body is responsible, is transparent, and that that body cannot be used for the benefit of a few individuals. But it's another example of how local authorities can make the best use of their own resources. And it is another example of means of financing in the context of devolution. So, ladies and gentlemen, rethinking this wash sector is in fact one of the most critical tasks that cities and towns right across the country have to do at the present time. We all know that water is life. My number one priority as mayor is water, and tied to that, sanitation and sewerage. Without water, not only can existing residents not survive, but any hope that we have to attract foreign direct investment disappears if you cannot guarantee industries going forward long-term sustainable sources and delivery of water. We cannot do this alone as a city council. We desperately need a broad consensus, particularly from residents and their associations, that you come behind us, that we have these debates as you will be having in the course of the next 2 days. So I would end with the request that whatever innovative ideas come out of your deliberations, please could they be communicated to me and to my office so that we can enjoy the benefit of the collective wisdom of all of you here today. So my very best regards to you all and my best wishes for a very productive 2 days. This is a critically important meeting.